Tonight on CTV News, we're covering the tragic loss of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
And then stick around, because we have information on recent COVID vaccine research at CSU and updates on the Cameron Peak fire. All that and more on CTV News, starting now.
Good evening, Rams. I'm Sophia Ridley.
And I'm Kenneth Fredrick. Welcome to the Thursday Night News Show. A lot has happened this week, so let's get right into it.
America suffered a tragic loss last week with the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ginsburg was sworn into the Supreme Court in 1993 by former President Bill Clinton. She served 27 years on the Supreme Court up until her death this last week. In those 27 years serving, she battled multiple cancers and worked through the death of her husband. Ginsburg was both a trailblazer and strong advocate among women's, LGBTQ, and minority rights.
I think whether you agree with her or not, politically speaking, she's going to go down in history for a long time.
Being a woman on the Supreme Court was really inspiring for me, and the work that she did with the ACLU for women's rights.
Some of Ginsburg's most notable Supreme Court rulings were Obergefell v. Hodges in 2015, in which same-sex marriage was legalized across all 50 states, which was a major victory for the LGBTQ community. In 1996, the United States filed a suit against the Virginia Military Institute, arguing their male-only admissions policy violated the 14th Amendment in the United States versus Virginia. The U.S. won, and Ginsburg made it clear that women's rights are constitutional rights. With 2020 being an election year, some people are concerned about Trump electing a third Supreme Court justice nominee of his presidency.
I believe it's constitutional, and in the systems that exist now, it is constitutional. However, I think the pattern leading up to it does not represent what the institutions of our government do stand for.
I think that Republicans right now are trying to rush this process to try to gain control of the courts.
Having both the Senate and presidency being Republican-ruled will make the process of electing a nominee faster and easier to approve. According to Gabby Reinhart, a journalism student at CSU, knowing what's going on in the Supreme Court is important with how significant the laws are that are being passed.
I think that's why it's important to know what the Supreme Court is always voting on, because now we have these giant laws in place that are so hard, they're so immovable because they got kicked out of the Supreme Court. So I think it takes people knowing, their local and their state laws and how things are moving around legislatively, because they should be solved, if at all possible, legislatively before it gets kicked out of the Supreme Court, because they don't want to make a decision about it.
Although her Supreme Court seat will soon be filled, Ginsburg left a lasting legacy for Americans and will remain in history as a true patriot to her country.
Meanwhile, in Fort Collins, 2 Colorado State University sororities have outbreaks of coronavirus, according to data released by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. The outbreaks came from the Pelican Lakes Golf Club. The club is located in Windsor and has postponed all further events and closed many of its dining options for a time. The 2 sororities involved were Gamma Phi Beta and Chi Omega, contributing to 8 of the 16 confirmed cases. 5 of the cases came from Gamma Phi Beta, while 3 came from Chi Omega.
CSU is not the only community affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Governor Jared Polis gave a moment of silence Tuesday for the 200,000 people who have lost their lives this year nationwide due to COVID. Polis discussed how much greater the impact has been across Native American communities. He stated that Native American communities have 5 times the hospitalization rates and 40% more deaths. The Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and Denver Indian Health and Family Services are working together to create a Native response team. Now, let's check out Westyn and his news on the CSU research.
Thanks, Sophia. So a lot of us may be aware of what's going on. There's a lot of stuff there. We do have a positive note coming up here right now. I did get the chance to go and have this COVID-19 research happen. Coronavirus is something that we're all aware of at this point, but did you know that CSU has a team here on campus working to help combat all that is going on? Rams. Right now, you know exactly what's going on. Coronavirus, every week feels like there's a new update. Every single time something happens, you feel like it's just going to get worse and worse. Well, guess what? We got good news this time around, something that might just be able to lift your spirits just a tiny bit.
Thanks to the coronavirus, life itself has seemed to change a tad bit.
Coming back to CSU, that statement has proven true. Things on campus, such as masks and testing sites, make us constantly aware of the situation around us. But what you may not be aware of is the team here at CSU working hard behind the scenes on a vaccine for coronavirus called Solovax. Recently, according to the source.colo State, the team behind the vaccine was granted $3.1 million from the NIAID in order to help advance the research into the vaccine. The team behind the vaccine is using UV lights and riboflavin in an attempt to help inactivate the coronavirus within a person, and then therefore allow their immune systems to start working on fighting it off. The vaccine has shown to be successfully tested in preclinical testings. Regardless of your opinion of everything going on, this is a total win for the state as well as for the entire world if Colorado State University scientists can continue to work and possibly help millions upon millions of lives within this world affected by the coronavirus. Don't forget, Rams, to maintain some good social distancing and follow good, healthy measures when out in public. Make use of the campus's hand sanitizer, as well as feel free to get tested if you are concerned. Now let's toss it back over to Kenny and Sophia so they can continue on with the news.
Thank you, Westyn, for those health and safety reminders. Let's turn our attention now to the Cameron Peak fires. As of yesterday, the Cameron Peak fires have been 27% contained. The fire now contains a little over 160 square miles. Voluntary evacuation orders have been lifted for the area between County Road 27 and Pencock Pass, as well as the Glen Haven and Storm Mountain areas. We will continue to update viewers as the Cameron Peak fire containment continues. Last year, CSU celebrated its 150th anniversary. In honor of the achievement, CSU alumni Ed Warner and former school president Tony Frank worked with producer Frank Boring to create a documentary about the history of 150 years at CSU.
Frank Boring was hired 3 years ago by then-President Tony Frank to document the Colorado State University's 150 years of stories. The documentary, titled The Great Experiment, CSU at 150, is about CSU's lengthy history. After all, the university has been around for a very long time. It started off as a land-grant institution back in 1870 before Colorado had even become a state. Boring was given the task of using all of the years of footage and photos to show the history of the school. That started with the task of organizing and digitizing decades worth of film. He attributes his success on the documentary to all of the help he received from coworkers and the many student workers who helped document and organize the rooms full of barely ordered videos.
Pitched the idea that if you have a tape that has only numbers on it and does not really tell us what's on it, then we have to actually have somebody look at that tape to tell us what's on it. And so I began a program of hiring students.
The documentary is said to have footage all the way back from 1919 and photos from before even then. The 80-minute long documentary covers the history of both Fort Collins and how the university fit into the changing world around it. Boring said that this documentary was necessary because it keeps the memory and the history of the school and the individuals who attended it alive.
I believe this particular documentary is unique in that it was a collaborative effort with a number of different departments and individuals and whatnot, but it actually does document 150 years of CSU's history.
If you would like to watch The Great Experiment, the film will premiere on Rocky Mountain PBS on the evening of October 1st at 8.
Speaking of CSU's history, a school tradition is postponed this year. Colorado State University has decided to not repaint the infamous Aggie A. The A was voted into creation by students back in 1923, but wasn't painted until 1924. Starting in 1985, fraternity brothers of Sigma Alpha Epsilon painted it annually. In the 2000s, CSU football players also joined in on the project. In recent years, students have partaken in this annual tradition around the first week of the fall semester. Due to coronavirus, this will be the first time in around 76 years that the A will not be repainted since the tradition started in 1944.
Traditions may have been postponed this year, but as long as there are watches, there will be lawsuits. Local watchmakers Vortic Watch Company have won a huge lawsuit involving its sale of a line of antique restored watches against Hamilton Watch Co. Vortic Watch Company has won their lawsuit, which was going on since 2015. The lawsuit was filed when Hamilton Watch Co. heard that the local watchmakers had been using parts of an antique Hamilton watch to make a line of pocket watches called the Lancaster. The watch sells for just under $5,000 each. Hamilton Watch Co. claimed that Vortic was guilty of trademark infringement for using parts of Hamilton watches and reselling their product. But the courts ruled that Vortic was not violating any trademark and ruled in Vortic's favor.
This concludes our news segment for tonight.
Stick around to see what's happening in entertainment with Angel Cooper up next.